Hey everybody, Scott Brower, Mackie Plastic Clam Ice Team Pro. Welcome to my inner sanctum. This is kind of where all of the Mackie Plastic research and development happens. After we cut a mold, we bring it in here, we study it, we look at the hydrodynamics and make sure it works right. And several times throughout the year I'm asked, relative to the baits that we produce, how do we rig it? How do we deliver that bait to the fish, and how do we fish it effectively using the jig or the hook, or what I consider to be the delivery system? How do we rig that? How do we tie it? And that's what we're going to be talking about today, is jigs and hooks and the baits that we're going to fish on those jigs and hooks, and how perhaps we can tweak each one a little bit and make it more productive. So that's what we're going to cover today in this kind of 101 on rigging techniques. So here's a couple of real brief clips on rigging. This is a drop shot rig. This is a basin perch. It's a Nils Sakula, dropping down and picking up that perch. The next one you're going to look at is a couple of upfeeding gills, and these gills are oriented down below the bait, and so we're fishing them with the bait oriented down towards their face a little bit better. The next clip you're watching here is a rock bass. He's feeding off the bottom, so we're just twitching, looking like a little bloodworm, and then we just pick it up a little bit and we finally hook up with him. In this video, what you're watching is a bass come through, and this is a drop shot rig. We're fishing it on his level, just about parallel with his eyes to pick him up. And then we have, again, kind of a combination of an upfeeding gill and also a parallel one coming in from the backside, and using that drop shot rig one more time. And last but not least, we're going to see a crappie come in here. We're just a little bit above his eye level with the jig, and when we do that, we have some great success. That's what we're talking about today. How do we rig? With all of the choices that are out there in either baits or jigs, it's our job to pull into focus, what are the fish really looking for that day? And how do we best present it to them? So let's take a look at some options. What we're looking at in this video is your basic drop shot rig. We have a weight on the bottom, follow it up, and you've got a hook tied in line. Now that hook could have dropper flies on it like these that could either have a piece of live bait, that's a little maggot, or they could have a piece of plastic tied on them, doesn't matter. What you see in the first one that we get to, and I would usually only use one of these, otherwise you have more hooks in the water. Sometimes that's not okay state to state, and also it just makes everything tangle a little bit easier. So I usually use only one, and then I'll leave 6-8 inches of tag line down here so that I can adjust the depth in which I want to fish that drop shot rig. First one has a scuddy on it. It's direct tied in to the hook. The second one actually has a loop knot in it, so you can see the line, the jig line, which would be up there, and then the tag line down at the bottom end has a loop in it. And sometimes when the fish are a little bit less aggressive, if you fish a little loop knot like this, the bait will go into their mouth a little bit easier. Got a little mini Mackie on there. So that's a couple of ways that I fish that. I mentioned during the fish videos that some fish feed up, some fish feed on the parallel plane, and some fish feed kind of moving down. And so this series of hooks, this series of jigs or delivery systems, have intentionally offset hooks to try to mimic each of those areas. You can see there's very strategic bends in these. My buddy Tom at Voodoo Bait and Tackle makes these for us at Mackie Plastic. He makes sickle hooks, they're Matsu sickle hooks with a weight forward dart head, which happens to be one of my favorites for imparting action into a piece of plastic. But if you don't have the ability to get those offset hooks, it's not too hard to make them. This is just any standard jig head, and what you'd want to do is pinch it right directly behind the body of the bait. Just be real careful you don't tweak too much, because you can actually weaken it, and you can actually create that offset look and feel. And what that does for you is it accesses the hook point more directly into the fish's mouth. Here's a little test video to show you what I'm talking about. With this sickle hook, or any down-shaped turned hook, what you do is you have the ability to present the bait, fish coming off the bottom to come up and get it. So right now I have that set at the first setting, which is get the bait to point down. The second setting, let me just adjust this real quick. The second setting gives it more of a parallel look in the water. So now that the tail is slightly turned up, and it also gives the fish coming through at a parallel, a straight on look at the jig and what they can do. And then last but not least, if you actually slide the bait a little further up and point it straight up, as we drop that all the way straight into the bottom of the table, and we can just twitch it, twitch it, twitch it. And that's what I was showing with the Rocky video that was occurring, and that is just the tail twitching looks just like a bloodworm in the water. So don't be afraid to, even with your combination of your jig and your plastic or your bait at any time, just tweak it and move it around on the hook a little bit, depending on which direction and where the fish are coming through at. So the bigger the bait, meaning the bait that you're fishing with, the jig should kind of match that. And here's a good idea of a swim bait, one that's got a little blade welded into the bottom of a great little walleye jig. I'm going to put a little bit bigger rig out the bottom, great combo walleye, and also perch bait. Another one, same thing, a little bit bigger, rests on the bottom if I'm going to pound the bottom with it, but also swims nicely through the water with a weight forward head on it. Notice a lot of these that you're going to see have weight in the front of the jig where it actually ties on to make it swim a little bit better. Here's a little bug eye that I designed, and it's got a great little Michigan Wiggler body on it, little blood tail. That one's on a dart jig head, so that dart jig head, what it does for you is it has that flat side so it stays straight up. The reason I like this so much for perch, which is a Nils Haley Sakula, is it drops straight through the water, does not impart spin in it, but then really slows down at the point of contact with the fish, so it's a great little bait. Again, this one's a little digger head that I have, pound, pound, pound into the bottom, then you just pick it up, a great little crappie bait there. And again, you know, just an idea of some of the larger stuff that we fish with and how to combo up some of the larger stuff. It doesn't matter really whether it's a vertical oriented jig or a horizontal oriented jig. We almost always have the plastic oriented horizontally with the bottom. So another good example of a vertical jig but rigged horizontally. And sometimes it's not always the big stuff, and I guess I'd leave you with this idea. It's not always the great big things. Sometimes it's the small little subtle changes that you do. Something different than everyone else is doing with your rigging techniques. So get out there, play with it. And again, I'm Scott Brower, Mackie Plastic, Clam, Ice Team Pro. I will see you out there.